Chapter 1 of Book 12 of Les Misérables, Volume 4, by Victor Hugo. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Les Misérables, Volume 4, by Victor Hugo. Translated by Isabel Florence Hapgood. Book 12, Corinth. Chapter 1. History of Corinth from its foundation. The Parisians who nowadays, on entering on the Rue Rambuteau at the end near the Halles, notice on their right, opposite the Rue Mondétour, a basket maker's shop having for its sign a basket in the form of Napoleon the Great, with this inscription: "Napoleon is made wholly of willow," have no suspicion of the terrible scenes which this very spot witnessed hardly 30 years ago. It was there that lay the Rue de la Chanvrerie, which ancient deeds spell Chanvrerie, and the celebrated public house called Corinth. The reader will remember all that has been said about the barricade effected at this point, and eclipsed, by the way, by the barricade Saint Merry. It was on this famous barricade of the Rue de la Chanvrerie, now fallen into profound obscurity, that we are about to shed a little light. May we be permitted to recur, for the sake of clearness in the recital, to the simple means which we have already employed in the case of Waterloo. Persons who wish to picture to themselves in a tolerably exact manner the constitution of the houses which stood at that epoch near the Pont Saint Eustache, at the northeast angle of the Halles of Paris, where today lies the embouchure of the Rue Rambuteau, have only to imagine an N touching the Rue Saint Denis with its summit, and the Halles with its base, and whose two vertical bars should form the Rue de la Grande Truanderie and the Rue de la Chanvrerie, and whose transverse bars should be formed by the Rue de la Petite Truanderie. The old Rue Mondétour cut the three strokes of the N at the most crooked angles, so that the labyrinth confusion of these four streets sufficed to form, on a space 3 fathoms square, between the Halles and the Rue Saint Denis on the one hand, and between the Rue de Signy and the Rue des Prêcheurs on the other, 7 islands of houses, oddly cut up, of varying sizes, placed crosswise and haphazard, and barely separated, like the blocks of stone in a dock, by narrow crannies. We say narrow crannies, and we can give no more just idea of those dark, contracted, many-angled alleys lined with 8-story buildings. These buildings were so decrepit that, in the Rue de la Chanvrerie and the Rue de la Petite Truanderie, the fronts were shored up with beams running from one house to another. The street was narrow and the gutter broad. The pedestrian there walked on a pavement that was always wet, skirting little stalls resembling cellars, big posts encircled with iron hoops, excessive heaps of refuse, and gates armed with enormous century-old gratings. The Rue Rambuteau has devastated all that. The name of Mondétour paints marvellously well the sinuosities of that whole set of streets. A little further on they are found still better expressed by the Rue Pirouette, which ran into the Rue Mondétour. The passer by who got entangled from the Rue Saint Denis in the Rue de la Chanvrerie beheld it gradually close in before him, as though he had entered an elongated funnel. At the end of this street, which was very short, he found further passage barred in the direction of the Halles by a tall row of houses, and he would have thought himself in a blind alley, had he not perceived on the right and left 2 dark cuts through which he could make his escape. This was the Rue Mondétour, which on one side ran into the Rue des Prêcheurs, and on the other into the Rue du Cygne and the Petite Truanderie. At the bottom of this sort of cul-de-sac, at the angle of the cutting on the right, there was to be seen a house which was not so tall as the rest, and which formed a sort of cape in the street. It is in this house, of 2 stories only, that an illustrious wine shop had been merrily installed 300 years before, this tavern created a joyous noise in the very spot which old Theophilus described in the following couplet: La branle l'esquelette horrible D'un pauvre amant qui se pendit. There swings the horrible skeleton of a poor lover who hung himself. The situation was good, and tavern keepers succeeded each other there from father to son. In the time of Mathurin Regnier this cabaret was called the Pot aux Roses, and as the rebus was then in fashion, it had for its signboard a post, Poteau, painted rose color. In the last century the worthy Natoire, one of the fantastic masters nowadays despised by the stiff school, having got drunk many times in this wine shop, at the very table where Regnier had drunk his fill, had painted, by way of gratitude, a bunch of Corinth grapes on the pink post. The keeper of the cabaret, in his joy, had changed his device, and had caused to be placed in gilt letters beneath the bunch these words: At the bunch of Corinth grapes, aux raisins de Corinthe. Hence the name of Corinth. Nothing is more natural to drunken men than ellipses. The ellipsis is the zigzag of the phrase. Corinth gradually dethroned the Pot aux Roses. The last proprietor of the dynasty, Father Hucheloup, no longer acquainted even with the tradition, had the post painted blue. A room on the ground floor, where the bar was situated, one on the first floor containing a billiard table, a wooden spiral staircase piercing the ceiling, wine on the tables, smoke on the walls, candles in broad daylight, this was the style of this cabaret. A staircase with a trap door in the lower room led to the cellar. On the second floor were the lodgings of the Hucheloup family. They were reached by a staircase which was a ladder rather than a staircase, and had for their entrance only a private door in a large room on the first floor. Under the roof, in two mansard attics, were the nests for the servants. The kitchen shared the ground floor with the tap room. Father Hucheloup had, possibly, been born a chemist, but the fact is that he was a cook. People did not confine themselves to drinking alone in his wine shop. They also ate there. Hucheloup had invented a capital thing which could be eaten nowhere but in his house, stuffed carps, which he called carpe au gras. These were eaten by the light of the tallow candle or of a lamp of the time of Louis XVI, on tables to which were nailed waxed cloths in lieu of tablecloths. People came thither from a distance. Hucheloup, one fine morning, had seen fit to notify passers by of this speciality. He had dipped a brush in a pot of black paint, and as he was an orthographer on his own account, as well as a cook after his own fashion, he had improvised on his wall this remarkable inscription: Carpe au gras. One winter the rainstorms and the showers had taken a fancy to obliterate the S which terminated the first word, and the G which began the third. This is what remained: Carpe au ras. Time and rain assisting, a humble gastronomical announcement had become a profound piece of advice. In this way it came about that though he knew no French, Father Hucheloup understood Latin, that he had evoked philosophy from his kitchen, and that, desirous simply of effacing Lent, he had equalled Horace. And the striking thing about it was, that that also meant, enter my wine shop. Nothing of all this is in existence now. The Mondétour labyrinth was disembowelled and widely opened in 1847, and probably no longer exists at the present moment. The Rue de la Chanvrerie and Corinthe have disappeared beneath the pavement of the Rue Rambuteau. As we have already said, Corinthe was the meeting place, if not the rallying point, of Courfeyrac and his friends. It was Grantaire who had discovered Corinthe. He had entered it on account of the Carpe au ras, and had returned thither on account of the Carpes au gras. There they drank, there they ate, there they shouted. They did not pay much, they paid badly, they did not pay at all, but they were always welcome.